Welcome to the show, Lana.
Thank you.
So, what is your sober date?
24 days ago. So it is July 28th.
So, what was going on July 27th? Congrats on 27 days.
Thank you. I had a procedure and it kind of, I lost my defense after the first one.
What do you mean?
Like, I was prescribed pain meds, and instead of taking one, I took two. And after I did that, I just flushed the rest of the bottle down the toilet because I knew where I was going.
So, you had some sobriety before you had like a minor relapse.
Right.
Okay. So, that makes sense.
So this summer has been brutal on my sobriety. I have had 3 lapses this summer.
With what?
Alcohol. It was.
So,
Sorry, go ahead.
was that your main addiction was alcohol?
Yes.
All right, well, let's rewind a little bit. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Clyde, Ohio. And
Another Ohio. I've had so many from Ohio on here. It's ridiculous. I'm not from Ohio. I didn't know anybody from Ohio, but there's been probably 10 to 15 different people from Ohio on my show. By far the most out of any state that has been on my show. Like it is, and it's not like they know each other. A couple of them knew each other, but majority of them don't know each other and all happen to be from Ohio. Like it's wild. So you're
here.
What's that?
There's nothing to do here.
Apparently not. When did you discover alcohol? How old were you?
So I was curious about alcohol from a very young age. And I would get to taste sips here and there. So a little background, my whole family is deaf, the family that I grew up with. And so we would have get-togethers with other deaf people within the deaf community, and there would be like card parties and like normal drinking. And I would get to taste like little sips here and there while I was growing up. And but what my first like actual drink, like getting messed up, like I was like 14.
So what's that like growing up with parents that are both deaf?
So for me, I kind of felt like the ugly duckling. I had this like victim mentality that I wanted to be deaf too because I wanted to be like the people in my house. My mom's deaf, my sister's deaf, my half brother's deaf, my sister's deaf. The grandparents I grew up with were deaf. My uncle is deaf, and then I have a hearing uncle. This is all on my dad's side.
That's a whole lot of deaf.
Yes.
Did you learn ASL before you even started talking?
Yes, that's I'm impressed that you would ask that question.
Yeah, because I figure that's a main form of communication with your entire family, not just one person.
Yeah, my family is not oral. Like they only sign.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. My wife knows ASL, and our kid was like, I've only been in his life since he was 5, and he's been in Chatterbox the entire time, but he wasn't talking when he was younger. So she taught him sign language. Okay. And that's how, he asked for stuff was like food. And I don't know any of it, to be honest with you. The only sign language I know is that. That's to the extent of my side language knowledge. So you're growing. Are you the oldest or youngest or middle?
I'm the youngest.
And okay, so not only are you the youngest, you're the only one that happens to hear.
Yes.
How did they know you could hear?
Every baby gets a hearing test after they're born.
I
Yeah.
never had kids. Like I've never had a child. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I have 3 stepkids, but I've never actually had a child, so I don't know that.
Yeah.
So you think they were disappointed when you came out and then you could hear?
No, I don't think that they cared either way. So like, but they just always told me that I was a CODA, so that's child of deaf adult, and that was something I should take pride in. So
It's a what?
A CODA, a child of a deaf adult. That's like my label in the deaf community.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
is there a big deaf community where you grew up?
So no. We would travel to Toledo, an hour away, and there was a deaf club there.
Is it hard for you to talk and not sign at the same time?
No,
you talk with your hands a lot, and that tells me that you're just so used to like doing sign language as a habit.
That's what I do for work. I'm an interpreter.
Oh, okay. I know. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So, and the fact that we're doing this over video, my interpreting is done over video. So I keep wanting to put my hands up and sign.
Because you're so used to it. I talk to interpreters all the time. I schedule for a hospital system.
Oh, okay.
So I get, sign language interpreters all the time where, they're talking for the patient. Which can be really frustrating because nobody wants to call the doctors. You know what I mean? Let alone somebody that is deaf. Nobody wants to have to call the doctor. So you're already in a bad mood by the time you're calling your doctor. Let alone if somebody's not understanding your frustration. I don't know if you sign harder, if you're mad. I don't know.
Facial expressions.
Oh, that's true.
Your tone of voice is all on your face.
Oh, okay. That makes sense then. So you grew up there. You kind of started drinking when you were 14. That's when you had your first drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Were you just like at home or were you out with friends?
So like, I guess my first party, my sister is 5 years older than me. So she was getting dropped off to the only deaf university in the world. And it was in Washington, D.C. So my parents dropped me off at a friend's house and we did the whole we're sleeping in a tent tonight, and then went back to my house and threw a rager. It was just me and her, and we just invited like the 2 upperclassmen that we were talking to because we all played soccer. And they proceeded to invite 40 other boys or men. I didn't even know who was at my house.
Did it get trashed?
Well, thankfully, my parents have a very large garage, so nobody was in the house. We were all in the garage. And it got busted by the police. And they left a note, "Sorry, we missed you, love the cops," because I was hiding in the house and I wouldn't answer the door. They circled the block too many times and we saw them, so everybody ran. And then I just went in the house and locked the door.
You got lucky.
Well, they came back when my parents came back home from being out of town, and they wanted to arrest me. And this is kind of like the theme in my story where my mom kind of just saves my butt. She was like, no. And like, my mom might be deaf, she might be disabled, but she's a Spitfire, and you don't mess with her and you don't mess with her kids. And she told the police that they could leave and that this was a family matter and that she would take care of it.
Now, were you translating for your mom at 14 to the cops?
I wasn't there. Otherwise, I think it might have went a completely different way.
Oh, you weren't home when the cops showed up?
Just my parents.
How were they communicating?
Writing back and forth.
And I'm sure they saw the frustration with how she was using the pen.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm my mom's baby, and she doesn't.
How did they handle you then when you got home?
So, I was like a master manipulator. And since I didn't really know anyone who was at the party, my mom tried to make me like write down all the names of the people that were at the party, and I was like, I don't even know. And she wanted to ground me, and I manipulated her, and I said, what am I going to tell my girlfriends why I'm not at the football game Friday? And like we were at a stalemate, and she was just like, because she didn't want anyone to know.
Oh, I see.
So I got out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, you got lucky then. I threw a party and I got in trouble. That's for sure. And there was no manipulating my way out of it. My dad was onto all my games. I was the oldest, so I'm the one that made all the mistakes first. By the time they got to my brother, he was allowed to drink as long as he had his friends sleep over. You know what I mean? And then, like, by the time they got to my sister, she could throw parties as long as they collected keys. So, like, they learned as they went, this is going to happen. We might as well, you know, keep her under the roof and watch out for her. And my brother and sister are not alcoholics at all. And they have their shit together. And as opposed to me, you know, who got in all the trouble that I could possibly get into. I had alcohol poisoning when I was 16. From drinking a fifth of Bacardi in 10 minutes. You can't do that, apparently. Ended up in the hospital, and they didn't pump my stomach because the only thing in my system was weed. Besides alcohol, I had plenty of that in my system. My dad's punishment was I wasn't allowed to sleep over anybody's house for the rest of high school. I was a sophomore, so I had to go my entire junior and senior year, and he stuck to it too. There was one night in the winter that followed, because that was on Easter Eve, and the following winter we got hit with a bad storm, and I went out to go drink and go like sledding in the snow and drink in the woods, and went back to my friend's house, and my jeans were like frozen up to the knee. You know what I mean? And I took them off. My friend gave me a pair of shorts to put on. And I called and I'm like, it's state of emergency. You guys can't pick me up. It's blizzard outside. Like, can I just stay at his house overnight? And then my dad's like, no, you're walking home. So out of spite, I walked home in a t-shirt and mesh shorts. And I stopped growing leg hair after that. I think I broke all the nerves in my legs or something. Because I barely have any leg hair, and I attribute it to that night walking in.
Yeah, I would say so.
I definitely learned my lesson from alcohol poisoning. Well, I didn't learn my lessons. I continued to drink. I just drank differently. I started drinking just beer instead. And like I changed the rules. You know what I mean? Like, no more hard stuff for me until I discovered Jack Daniels in my 20s.
Right.
You know, 21, I discovered Jack Daniels and whiskey, and then I was back to liquor again. But for the rest of high school, I primarily just drank beer. So you're 14. Did you continue to drink after that?
For about 2 years. I was also allowed to have friends over to drink. Because my mom kind of figured out I was going to do it one way or another.
Yeah. That's because you're the baby. So just like my sister is the baby, she got away with it, and so did you.
Right. And with my sister being 5 years older than me, when she started drinking at 18, I was 13 and I was ready to go. I didn't think that our age difference had anything to do with the rules. Right? I was like, I should be able to drink too. And like she's an adult, like it's completely different. But then I get into a car accident in high school, and I took another man's life, and I didn't drink for the rest of high school because the man's life that I took away, his family was very upset naturally, like to no fault of their own, but they kind of like acted like as if I did it on purpose. And they made it known that they were watching me. Like when I would go to court, there would be like dates and times of where I was at smiling in public. So it was really hard. And my mom was like, no more drinking. Like, so it's kind of like one of those, like, I get in trouble, so I like dry out for a little bit. But then when I went to college, it was like game over.
So did you go away to college?
Yeah, just to like the university close to home, Bowling Green State University.
Okay. I've heard of Bowling Green. They play football there.
Yeah.
It's like Division I football. So is it a party school?
Oh, 100%.
So but now you're 18, 19, and you're right back to drinking again and just not driving?
Right.
Like you made a rule for yourself.
Well, I didn't have a license. I didn't get my license back until I was 21 or 22.
With good reason.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, one of my good friends growing up, he was in a car accident when he was drunk, and the other person died. And they ended up saying that he wasn't drunk and he fell asleep because he had a long day at work. And so he wasn't like charged. He was charged with vehicular manslaughter.
Yeah.
But, he did like 3 months in jail or something like that and lost his license, obviously. And I think he's got it back now. That was like over a decade ago, but he wore a lot of guilt about that. And it was Christmas Eve. So it hurt even more that like he woke up on Christmas Day in the hospital, and then he found out he was handcuffed to the bed. And then he found out about the other guy who passed away in the other car. So
I just want to clarify, I wasn't drinking in my accident.
Oh, you weren't?
No. But I mean, I was distracted, and I would say that like my alcoholism played a part in that, right? Being an inexperienced young driver.
Yeah. Well, that's good that you weren't, you know what I mean, drinking then. Because then it could have been way worse for you.
Oh. Yeah.
How old in Ohio do you have to be to get your license?
16.
Oh, okay. It's like 18 here.
Oh.
Or maybe 17. I'm not sure. I didn't get my license in Pennsylvania. I got my license in New Jersey. Oh. And you had to be 17 in Jersey. And I got mine at 17 and a half because I didn't do like my required 6 hours. So I had my permit for 6. You get your permit either 6 months before you turn 17. And then if you do 6 hours of practice tests, you can get your license on your birthday, or you can get your permit on your birthday and have that for 6 months and then take your driver's test. And all my friends were already driving, so like I wasn't in a rush to get my license.
Right.
So I did it the old-fashioned way. I got my permit, then my license. And luckily, with all the accidents I've been in, I've been able to keep my license, because there was one time I was driving home from house sitting someone, and I was on Xanax, and I got into 3 car accidents on my 45-minute drive.
Damn.
Like 3 different car accidents. Right. You know what I mean? Like back to back. I just kept driving. Yep. and I got lucky that, since other cars hit me, it didn't look like my fault. You know what I mean? So like I kept being able to drive away from the accidents.
Oh.
Like none of them totaled my car. They were all like minor fender benders.
Yeah.
But still, they were 3 accidents. Let's call it like it is. So now you're in college and you decide to start drinking again. How long does it take for it to become a problem?
I would say immediately. I was in college for 4 years, and I probably went to 50 classes all 4 years. Like actually showed up and attended class like 50 different days out of 4 years. My first year in college drinking was spent crying over that accident. I can't imagine how annoying I was because nobody was from my hometown. Nobody, you know what I mean? Like, they're just like, what is this girl going on and on about? And I would just black out and cry. I mean, that's a whole lot of trauma. Because I think for the first 7 years after the accident, I just wanted to kill myself. So obviously drinking was an easier solution than just actually killing myself.
Yeah, and that's my friend had the same kind of problems where he was dealing with like suicidal ideations because he felt so horrible about what happened.
Oh yeah, I took somebody's life. In my mind, I didn't deserve to live.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't deserve it one bit. And I mean, before the accident, I already had self-esteem issues. I already had feelings of like worthlessness. So put actual trauma on top of that, and it's game over. So then my drinking just progressed, and then every year I would tell my family I wanted to drop out and come home, and they're like, "Keep going, you can do it." Like, like rooting for me. Like, they're really supportive. Like, my family's like super supportive of me, and I would just keep going back, like, but of course they didn't know how bad it was when I was there. Like,
Did you graduate?
No.
How bad did it get when you turned 21?
Well, let me just tell you this. I don't know how old I was around 21. The summer before my 4th year of college, I went to a music festival and took drugs with a stranger, and I like messed up my brain. Like, it was a research chemical drug. And at the time I was a huge pothead, and I could no longer smoke pot. It would send me into psychosis. I was like hallucinating and all of this stuff. And finally my family's like, maybe you shouldn't go back to college. Like, maybe you should take a break. And I was like, oh no, I'm going back. Because that was my stomping grounds at that point. And so like my 4th year in college was a blur. When I was going through psychosis, my sister begged me to go see our family doctor and tell him what was going on. But I didn't say it was drug induced. I just said, hey, I'm hallucinating. I don't know what's going on with me. And I was prescribed Xanax. And so you can just imagine the rest of my college career was a blur. There's like a 6-month period that I don't even remember in my life.
Yeah, I mean, people that don't know, Xanax causes you to black out, let alone if you mix Xanax and alcohol, you black out within 10 minutes. If you take Xanax and then drink, you're going to black out. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. You're going to black out. What milligram did they prescribe you?
Just the footballs. I don't even remember.
Oh, okay. So just the little guys, but still it's enough.
I would compile them.
Yeah. Yep. exactly. I was prescribed the bars, and I'd be through a script in 5-6 days. I'd be, and then buying them off the street after that because I would go through my entire script in days.
Right.
And you don't want to go through benzo withdrawals because then you could literally die. Um, Same with alcohol. If you stop drinking alcohol suddenly, you can die. They're the only two things that if you abruptly stop, you can die. Like, it's wild.
We were doing both.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're alive.
Well, I wasn't drinking a lot when I was on pills. I had different stages of things, from 11 to 22 was alcohol. I had dabbled a little bit in pills, but it was alcohol from 11 to 22. And then 22 to 31 was pills. I barely drank. I drank at family functions so that I could be high and look like I was drinking too much. You know what I mean? Like, I'd be sipping on a beer for a couple hours, but maybe people think that I was chugging beers.
Right.
I would drink and play, beer pong or flip cup, but I wasn't like heavy drinking. I was just keeping up appearances.
Right.
And I was actually high the entire time. And I didn't take Xanax all the time. There was just different phases of when I did. I one time blacked out while I was driving on the highway for an hour. I don't remember anything. I remember looking at their mile markers on every like 10th of a mile. And I remember looking at the mile marker and going, okay, I got 30 miles to my exit. And then I came to like a minute later and I was 30 miles past my exit. So I went 60 miles completely blacked out. Don't remember a thing to this day about that drive. And it scared me from taking Xanax. I had taken the Xanax to keep away the withdrawals from opiates because I was a really bad pill addict with painkillers with oxys. So I would drive 2 hours each way to get oxys almost 4 or 5 times a week.
Right.
And that trip was never a fun trip. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'd be withdrawing the entire time, throwing up into a bag while I just kept driving. Not something I recommend, throwing up while driving. It's never fun. I lost my gallbladder in sobriety because of all the bile I threw up over the years that my gallbladder stopped functioning. So you finally drop out of college when you're 22. How long does it take for your alcoholism to progress?
Oh, once I'm back home.
Like, you had your license now?
Yes. So my saving grace, when I dropped out, I met a bunch of other codas, and they were like, come work with us. Like, you make X amount of money an hour. Like, come work with us. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a lot of money, back in 2016.
Yeah.
And they, and I've been an interpreter ever since while battling my alcoholism. So I worked for a video relay service company for 9 years. I just switched companies. But if I didn't have the boss that I had, I would have never kept my job. I could stay sober long enough to go to work and like function. But when I was on my way home from Toledo, I would stop at the carryout because it was an hour drive.
It was an hour drive to work every day?
Yes. Yes. And I would stop at the carryout every day. And I lived with my parents at the time. So I would go to my best friend's apartment and drink at her place. And she would yell at me because I would start drinking from the point of the carryout, which was like 20 minutes away from where I was going. And I would get, this is so pathetic, I would get a 3-pack of Bud Ice.
It's okay. Do you want to feel better then? I'll tell you, I had a relapse with alcohol. I went 13 months. I quit opiates April 25th, 2018. and I relapsed with drinking on May 25th of 2019, 13 months exactly later. And I went to the liquor store and I bought a 6-pack of Twisted Tea. So if that makes you feel any better about your Bud Ices,
I was like, that's so gross. And I was like, it was $3 and I got drunk.
Yep. I used to drink the Tall Boys and Natty Ice, like the big cans of Natty Ice. Yes. I used to drink them when I started taking pills and stopped going to the bar, because I went to the bar so much when I turned 21. I was already drinking really heavily because I moved out when I was 20 years old, and I was the only one out of my friends that had their own apartment. So it was like party central in my apartment. Everyone, if they wanted to drink, you came to my house. You wanted to smoke weed, you came to my house or my apartment. And, I worked a lot. I worked in retail, so my hours were always like 3 to 11. And I'd get drunk till 3 a.m. and then wake up and then go to work after sleeping it off all day.
100%.
So I was drinking really heavily, but I turned 21. I was like shot out of a cannon at the bars 6-7 nights a week. And by the time I turned 22, I was over the drinking, and I discovered pills, like really discovered opiates. And that's all I wanted, and it's all I needed. And I went 10 years on painkillers before I finally, quit them 6 years ago. But my entire 20s, 22 to 31, it was pills every single day. No breaks, you know what I mean? Like, it was consistent. The only time I took a break was I went to Europe for like 2 weeks with my family, and I was able to go the entire time without pills. But besides that, like, what's that?
Did you go into withdrawal while you were there?
No, because I had already stopped taking pills. I should say this. I stopped taking pills 2015 after my fiance committed suicide. I stopped taking pills and I moved to North Carolina to like be in a new setting. The problem was she committed suicide 3 days after I moved, and I wore a lot of guilt. And so I drank heavily for that entire year in 2015. And I would only do pills once a month. Once a month, I would send my friend money in Jersey, and he would overnight me pills in the mail. So I would only do pills for like a week, and then I would be off them for 3 weeks. But I was really big into cocaine and drinking that year, because when being at the bar every night, you find coke dealers and you start doing coke all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I went pretty heavy with that, but not like heavy to the point where I went through withdrawals. Right. And then when I was in Europe, I drank every night. So I never had to go through alcoholic withdrawals in Europe, because my sister was 19 at the time and my brother was 25. I was 28. And my sister was legal to drink in Europe.
Yeah.
So we drank everywhere we went. So I didn't have to go through alcohol withdrawals. And when I came back, I got into pills again, and you don't really feel the alcohol withdrawals if you're replacing it with opiates.
Right.
So like I said, I have different stages of my addictions, because I'm not just an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. I am a compulsive gambler. Like, I have many things that I that I attend meetings for. So now you're getting drunk every day leaving work. And I'm sure in your days off, you're getting drunk the whole entire time. But you said you were living at home. When did you move out?
From the time I dropped out until 2 years ago, I lived with my parents. My drinking was progressing. I too started doing cocaine. And my mom and sister was like, I don't know what's going on with Lana. They knew, but they didn't know. Because at that time, we were still drinking at family functions. Now that I'm sober, my mom's also sober. Not because she's an alcoholic. She just had some health issues, and they're like, if you drink, you're just going to keep getting these flare-ups. So she's one of those special people where the doctor's like, hey, this affects your health. And she's like, okay.
Yeah.
I surrender.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just so simple. So she's been sober longer than me now. It's funny because I got sober before she did, but I don't even know how many years sober she is now. And she doesn't count or anything. You know what I mean? Because like it's just different.
Yeah.
So they were thinking about sending me to rehab, but I ended up pregnant. And they were like, okay, we're not going to send her to rehab. She's pregnant now, so she's not going to drink. She's not going to do drugs. She's pregnant. I'd like to say I spent my whole pregnancy sober, but that same friend that I would go and drink Bud Ice at her house before I was pregnant, I would go get those wines that were in like cardboard, and it looked like a glass of wine, but it was probably like 2 or 3. And until one time, the friend, being a good friend, chewed me out, and she was like, your baby's going to come out messed up. And I was like, okay. And I wasn't doing that every day, but like frequently.
Yeah, I mean, and I have a friend that smoked cigarettes the entire pregnancy. So I have a friend that smoked weed the entire pregnancy. So I know people that can still and plus there's other mothers to be much worse off, shooting heroin, smoking crack, and pregnant the entire time. So, and wine is like the least dangerous thing that you can drink if you're, pregnant.
Right.
So you were responsibly yeah.
So they didn't send me to rehab because they were like, maybe motherhood will straighten her out. So I was with a partner living at my parents' house. And when the baby came, it was getting crowded. You got your boyfriend there, you got your newborn, and you got your parents, and it's getting kind of chaotic. So we buy a trailer a town over. I think I lived there for 2 months before I hit my rock bottom. The boyfriend called me out for drinking 9 days in a row when my son was like 2 months old. And I'm thinking in my head, like, why are you calling me out? Like, there's nothing wrong with this. Like, at this point, I've normalized drinking, daily drinking. And then boss at work is coming down on me because, oh shoot, my Mac's gonna die. What should I do?
You can move and plug it in.
Okay. But
so your boss came down on you?
Yeah, my boss came down on me, and I was in jeopardy of losing my job that at that point I had for 4 or 5 years. And he was like, I don't know what to say to you anymore. And I looked at this person like a father figure. He was a coda too. And the week before, my mom had told me, because like my drug use was getting out of control again, and like I couldn't take care of my newborn, my infant. And the week before that, she was like, Lana, like, why don't you save these types of parties for like the weekend or like special events like your birthday? And I was like, yeah, okay, Mom, like, sure. And then the following week I came to work and I didn't know that I was still drunk, and I felt like I was gonna like not be able to do my job, so I left. And that's when my boss came down on me. And I called my mom, and then she no longer was playing nice guy. She was like, enough is enough. And I crawled into AA. It was a Thursday, and I knew someone that went to that as like their home group. So I went there looking for them. And I've been in AA for the past 7 years, but I don't have continuous sobriety, obviously.
I love AA. Not everybody can say that they like meetings or they like the program, but AA saved my life twice. You know what I mean? Like when I had my when I didn't I went to one AA meeting in addiction and one NA meeting in addiction because our parents were making us, my girlfriend, my fiance, and I. And we both hated each one. We both went to AA together. We both went to NA together, and it's like, well, this isn't for us. And when I went to rehab, the only time you could leave the house, the rehab house, is if you went to an outside meeting. So I started to love AA because it meant we were getting out of the house and being around other people. And then I was sitting in a meeting and it was a speaker meeting, and the person that was speaking was saying things that I understood. That was like where I was relating in and not relating out. And I was completely bought into the program since then. And so when I had my relapse with benzos and weed, I knew that I didn't need to go to rehab. I just needed to go back to AA. The only problem is AA is so like strict around here. They don't like hearing about outside substances. And I was in there 4.5 years sober from alcohol, but only a couple days clean from benzos and weed. So I never felt heard. So I switched to NA because in NA in the literature it says alcohol is a drug, period. So I can identify as an alcohol, and I do. I identify as an alcoholic, addict, compulsive gambler. If you name it, I'm probably it. That's how I identify myself. And I now I have a sponsor in NA. I'm going through the steps in NA, and I've been through the steps in AA 6 years ago, and I had that moment like, oh, I've arrived.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to doing the steps again, but like NA gives you a workbook. It's like a thick workbook that you have to answer all these questions to, and it's not like, all right, you said let go, let God. So now you're done step 2. It's not as simple as, or step 3. It's not as simple as that in NA. And I
Okay.
feel like I need that kind of structure now after my last relapse. So, and my wife does recovery Dharma.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you ever heard of that. It's like a Buddhist version of AA.
Oh, cool.
Instead of sponsors, you have mentors, and instead of going through the steps, you go through inquiries. So it's a lot different. It's the same, but it's a lot different at the same time.
The
So we yeah, the language, yeah, exactly. But we both have our different, paths that we're taking, but we're both staying sober throughout. Um, but so now you've got
right.
7 years. Now you've got 7 years in and out of AA.
Yes. So I don't have any like relapses that were like long benders or anything. Like all of my relapses are like one night of drinking, and then the next day I'm like, oh no, like you know what I mean? Like I got to start over. Like I can't continue, like, cause I know what will happen. Like I should, before I take that first drink, know what will happen, but I don't have a defense, right? Um, like I've had like stints of relationships with God, but I never like had a prayer life, or like the past 24 days have been magical. Um, After my last relapse, my sponsor at the time had to let me go, and so that night I just got a new sponsor, and she kind of used the same language you just did, and she was like, sponsorship isn't even the same as it was before. It's kind of like mentorship now. Did I lose you?
No, your signal's cutting a little out, in and out. Maybe it's that. But now I can hear you again. So your sponsor is like considered a mentor?
Yeah, like I still call her my sponsor, but like I don't know what's happening.
Is it your Wi-Fi?
Well, the thing is I'm in the room with the router and the
Now I can hear
modem.
you and see you. Now it's better. So you have a sponsor, and have you been going to meetings for the last 24 days?
Yeah. So before I was only going to one meeting a week. I have 2 children. I work. So like I'm not going to do 90 and 90 or anything like that. But I've been trying to hit between like 3 and 4 a week now. And for the past 7 years I've been told to hit my knees and I don't do it. And I don't know what it is this time, the willingness, the honesty, I don't know. My current sponsor was like, all I ask of you, like she just made it so simple. She was like, get on your knees and say, God, help me. That's it. And I was like, okay. And I did for a week, and then I didn't for 3 days, and she checked on me. Are you still hitting your knees? No. And she was like, that's the only thing I asked you to do. And I was like, okay. So we were talking on the phone at like 5:45 in the morning that day. And I was like, as she was saying, when we get off the phone, hit your knees, I was saying, when we get off the phone, I'll hit my knees. And when I hit my knees, like I had a spiritual experience. Like she said, like hitting your knees is the quickest way to humility. And I could feel displeasure in my body, like a surrendering when I was hitting my knees.
Yeah.
And so I've been hitting my knees every morning since. And the alignment I feel with like the universe and those things, it's just crazy.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I had a problem with God for a while. And my dad passed last June, and I was mad. And cancer, it took a lot out of him in the year he had it. And I when I finally got sober, it was like maybe a week or two into going to meetings again. And I usually have pretty vivid dreams where I remember them. But in my dream, I walked into an AA meeting and he was there and he said, "Welcome back. Like, I've been waiting for you." And that's all that I needed to hear. You know what I mean? Like, I woke up like crying, because I knew that I was doing the right thing by quitting everything and diving back into the program again. That's all I needed to hear. And it's really weird. I talked to my mom, my sister, and my brother in that same 5-day span. We all had dreams with him in it.
That's
like
crazy. He's communicating to you.
What's that?
The communication from him. That's crazy.
Yeah. With my sister, my dad was talking to my brother-in-law about work, which is a conversation they had all the time. They talked about business. So my sister had a dream that she was watching, her husband and my dad having a conversation. I forget what my mom's was. My brother was, we were driving around in my truck, and he had just put his truck into the shop to get work on. So, but they happened to be driving in his truck and having a conversation. So yeah, we all had dreams in the same week with him in it. So then I was like, okay, maybe God is real, and I listen to music a lot while I work. Even though I'm on the phones, I have it playing like low in the background. And I listened to this band called AJR, and I'm not sure if you've ever heard of them. But one of the songs is called God is Really Real, and it's about their dad that died from lung cancer. And so that song hit me. And then I was listening to like an Ed Sheeran mix because I love Ed Sheeran. And one of his songs is called Visiting Hours, and it's about heaven having visiting hours.
Oh,
So like I bawled both times that I heard those songs, and now I can listen to them and be okay. But the first time I heard those songs, because Visiting Hours isn't on the radio, so I'd never heard it before.
oh, okay.
It was just in his like random mix of Ed Sheeran songs that was playing on my Apple Music, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, do you use Apple Music or Spotify?
Spotify.
Okay, I use Apple Music, and it shows like there's a category called Essentials, and it's all random songs. And I put it on shuffle every day. Like at least once a day, I listen to Ed Sheeran and AJR or Billy Joel. Those are my three that I play in the background almost every day when I work. It soothes me. It keeps me centered to have the music playing. It's low enough that I can hear it, and the people on the phone can't hear it. So
Right.
I'm glad you're back 24 days in. You seem to be doing great this time because you're changing the way you work your program, and that makes a world of difference. And thank you for sitting down and being so open and honest with me, because I know it's not always easy to like tell your story, but the more time you get in AA, the easier it'll be to tell your story over and over again.
Yeah.
Like for me, I'm so numb to telling my story because I've said it so many times, like on podcasts or in meetings.
Right.
Share at every meeting I go to. I make it a point to share once. So I'm like in NA, I share every single day for 5 minutes. And it's usually on topic, but sometimes it's just checking in with where my mind is. And
Right.
I just find it important in my recovery to share because it gets shit off my chest. I don't journal. I'm told I should journal,
Me
but
too.
my journaling is speaking in every single meeting that I do. And you know
Right.
what I mean? So that's my form of getting myself onto a page. It's getting myself, being vulnerable with a group of people.
Right.
So glad you're hitting your knees. I'm glad you're 24 days sober, and keep up the great work, Lena.
All right. Thank you.
I'll see you later.
See ya.
Bye.